Have you ever, as a principal, thought, data is so not my thing and it's not fun? I don't know what to do with this data. The state has data, our districts have data, and we have school site data and teacher data and individual student data and groups of student data. It's like bigger than life. And you will hear things like, we should get rid of state assessments. We should get rid of assessments in the classroom and all things grades for that matter. Oh, let me just slow down, microphone. Okay. I like looking at data, and I like looking at data because it can inform what you do. The data tell a story. And you may not believe so, but you have data and you think about data. Sometimes when you wake up, you might go and exercise for 30 minutes. And you know, if you exercise for 30 minutes every day, you will have some type of data change. If you eat differently, if you eat healthier, if you decide this evening that you're going to have a cupcake instead of that apple, that's data. And it tells you how you feel. If you go to bed late, if you get up early after you go to bed late, and if you go to bed early and you get up early, that's all data. Well, I'm going to open up some California data. Yes, I've opened up Illinois data and Ohio data, and I like to do that because I lived in both of those states. But I'm more familiar right now with California data. I want you, as a principal, as a teacher, to just breathe and let's talk about what we can do with the data so that it can inform what we do, especially at the beginning of the year. Now, we're coming towards the end of the year. For me, it's going really quickly. And at the end of the year, most states offer a state assessment. And that's that a state assessment is a moment in time. For us in California, it's grade 3 through 8 and a grade in high school. For us, it's 11th grade. And we do this for a language and we do this for mathematics. And then our 5th grade, our 8th grade, and 1 grade in high school takes a science assessment. I wish we did it in all the grades, but don't get mad at me for saying that. I think that if we just look at this data and say, what is it telling me? And if you're not sure, we're going to go and look at some data and think about, I'm going to show you all the data sources that I think you should know about, whether you're a parent, a teacher, if you're a student and you're maybe in middle and high school and you're like, where can I look at this school site data? This is where you would look at it. Now, every student in 3rd through 8th grade that takes the assessment and 11th grade will get what we call a student score report, and they can look at their individual data. I am not going to access any of that. I'm just going to show you what is the public data, and we're going to look at how to maybe decide what can we do with this data at our school site. Some of you are thinking, it's the end of the school year, I can't do anything with that data. It can provide really good insight on what kind of professional development your school site needs, especially when it comes to literacy, writing, reading literacy, whether it's informational or literature. It can help you with the speaking piece, the research piece. It can help you understand the computational piece of the mathematics and the science content piece and how all those go together. And I think, and yes, your teachers have data. They can look at the data. It informs how the student is doing. But the question is, we take this big picture data and then we have to take it down to our school site as a leader of the school site, whether you're the assistant principal or principal, and I recommend that you talk about it immediately when you come back to school in the fall. And typically you will have access to it where you can't share it with the public yet, but you can at least talk about, well, this is what happened in this classroom. And let me just pause for a second. 3rd grade teachers do not just assess 3rd grade. They assess kinder, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Same with 4th grade, kinder through 4th grade. 8th grade teachers assess kinder through 8th grade. And yes, and they also assess 8th grade science, all of 6th through 8th grade, and same with 5th grade, K through 5. You can argue that it's the 3rd through 5th grade standards in 5th grade, but when kids have a foundation in kindergarten, it really helps them in 5th grade. And then the same with high school. 11th grade teachers are not assessing 11th grade students. They are assessing the graduated system from kinder through grade 11. So you know that old adage of, we do it, so do not get mad at me when I say this. The colleges blame, let's just go with this. The companies blame the universities, and the universities blame the high school teachers, or even K-12, the high school teachers. And we should say, maybe not blame, but say, well, they didn't get it in that previous school year. And then the high school teachers say, well, I don't know what they got in middle school. And then the middle school teachers say, well, I don't know what they got in elementary school. It goes all the way down to kindergarten, and the kindergarten teachers say, well, I don't know what access they had at home. So just set aside the whole blame thing and say, parents send their best kids to us in school. They just do. So whoever that student is, This is the knowledge that they came with in your classroom. It's not good or bad, it's just information. So what do we do with the information that we have? If a student is in kindergarten and they can read and write and probably can access second grade, well, we give them what they need. We accelerate them. If a student is in kindergarten and they've never seen a letter before, they've never held a pencil or a pen, they've never seen colors before, we give them what they need. We intervene and we do something about it. Instead of looking at the child going, oh, they can't. All students are learning something. And you know this because they can either articulate it, they can do something, they can move, whatever that looks like. We are learning anyway. So let's look at some student data, and it's collective data. And I'm only going to look at the state of California data, even though I would love to pick a school site. If you want me to pick a school site to talk about your school, let me know in the comments. So we're going to jump over and look at the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. We're going to look at the California dashboard. And we're also we're going to have to pick a district for that one. We're going to look at the data quest, where you can look at demographic data. And then we're going to look at ed data. And we're just going to look at the data and talk about what are ways you as a leader or a school site teacher, or even a parent say, you know what, I really want to add and some feedback on maybe what you can do with my child. So let's just jump on over to the data and we're going to have fun. Remember, it's fun. Data is just informational. Information, we don't need to make it emotional. Let's examine this data. In the state of California, we have the CAASPP test results. And if you just Google CAASPP results, this is what you get. So, and I'm just going to click on it and open it up. You can do this for other states. Just find out whether or not there's a smarter balance assessment, or just Google state assessments with your state name. Like if I was doing this for Illinois, I would say Illinois State Assessment. Now I know they use the PARCC, P-A-R-C-C, so I'd probably put that in. You can even put state report card, things like that. But if you want the interactive site, you might want to just put state assessment with the state name and results. So this is what we get. Now there are 6 tabs you can click on. It'll talk about the assessment. You can select any of these resources, press releases, and contacts. We're going to live here for now. Yes, there are other places, but I just want to live here. And if you are a teacher or a principal, and I'm just going to live in California, you can put your school name or district name here. I caution you. So because I'm in Southern California, I'll just pick like, say, Berkeley. See how I didn't hit enter? A lot of things will pop up. And then I'll kind of search, well, do I want Berkeley High or Berkeley Unified or Berkshire Elementary? Then I'll click on it. But I'm going to come out of that because I'm just going to live in the state. So this is, first of all, the year. This is what I would do in front of teachers if I were a principal. But if I am just a teacher, and I shouldn't say just a teacher because you are the heart of the schools, you want to do this too. Find your school site, and maybe you are an elementary teacher and you teach, even if you teach kinder, first, or second grade, you need to know how they did. Because if third grade did well, you're part of that. They don't just take credit, you do too. So you can select a year. Let's just live in the current year, or let me correct myself. Current year 2023-24 assessment is the end of this year. It's March right now. This data is still valid because it tells me something. And so I can just look at this data, and the overall data here for English language arts is giving me that I want kids to be in either the met or exceeded. And the total for the state is 46.66% of the students met or exceeded the standard for ELA. And you're like, well, what's the standard? Well, if you want to know what the standards are, go to this video. It's probably up in that corner over there. Anyway, so the standards basically mean the English language, oh my gosh, oh my. The standards basically mean the English language arts assessment standards, meaning whether they are in reading, writing, speaking, or listening. And there's a list of standards that they need to master in every grade level. So in kindergarten, it might be one level, and they might tweak it a bit in the first or second grade. It might say review or look at, or and then by the time it gets to 5th grade, it might say interpret. So just if you want to look at that, you can Google California ELA standards. It'll pop up. So this is what it means. So if we have 46.66% of our students met or exceeded in English language arts, that means the difference is the rest of the students did not meet it. So right now we can see that level 2 and level 1, this is where they live. And this is data that I would just, as a principal or a teacher, I'm like, okay, so this is how they did. You can feel bad about it if you want, or you can say, what can I do differently? Level 2 and level 1, this is where they live. And this is data that I would just, as a principal or a teacher, I'm like, okay, so this is how they did. You can feel bad about it if you want, or you can say, what can I do differently? The same with mathematics. This is the overall state. But what you can do is you can select grade 3 and hit apply. This is now, that's something to be said. Look, 42% in grade 3, but 45% in grade 3 for math. That's a lot higher than the state. Something to talk about. And you can even do this if you wanted to compare the state to your school district. Like this is the average for the state. Grade 4, they're balanced. Like if they do well in ELA, they might do well in mathematics. Now, sometimes kids do well in math and they don't do well in ELA or English or the language arts, or they do well in both or they don't do well in both. Then let's go to 5th grade and see what happens. Notice that there's a trend. This looks very similar to the state. Let's go to 6th grade, very similar to the state. 7th grade, 8th grade. There's what's happening. This is a conversation. If you're a middle school teacher, what is happening with the language compared to the math? What are the gaps that students aren't learning here? Like this is a conversation. And then we can jump to grade 11 and go, okay, so they seem to do better than the state in English, language arts, and not so well in mathematics. So what does that tell us? Lots to talk about. And now let's just go back to all grades, but that's not, you can look at the different schools, non-charter, charter schools. You can separate these two. So let's go to charter schools for the state of California. This is where we are with charter, and charter doesn't mean it's not public. It could be a dependent charter or an independent charter, another video. And then let's look at non-charter. I feel like this is one of those eye doctor things. Non-charter, 46.65 and 34.95. So slightly higher in ELA, slightly lower in mathematics. So let's go back to all schools. The other thing that you can do is you can look at demographic groups. So you can look at student disability status and reported disability, apply it. This is a conversation. What is happening? Non-reported disability. There's a difference. Then we can go to economic status, socioeconomically disadvantaged, which means low income and a parent or parents that have not graduated or have a high school diploma. Big difference. Non-SED. Yeah, as a principal, I'm like, okay, how can I look at these two student groups? What can I do differently with this student group? They need access to maybe some intervention, some conversations. Maybe there's some trauma. There's a lot of things you can talk about. And then we can go to English language fluency. And there's a whole big drop down, okay? Initial fluent proficiency or English proficiency, reclassified fluent English proficient. And I want to show you this. These are kids who have reclassified compared to students who are considered English learners. And these typically are elementary at this point. But when we reclassify them, because when they're reclassified, they're still an English learner because it's the language fluency, but these students need more designated supports. And then we have what we call our long-term English learners. These may be middle school or high school, and they've been here long enough, but they're not accessing the language. So conversations. You can look at ethnicity for economically disadvantaged by race. So this is economically disadvantaged. You can look, and you can look at all of them. So you can go through all of the student groups here. You also can do it by ethnicity for non-economically disadvantaged, okay? See the difference? Conversations. And you may have already known this, but what are you doing with this information? What are you doing with the information? And you can go all the way down. You can say, okay, so not economically disadvantaged. You can also go to just race and ethnicity combined. So that's good information. I like to live here because you may have this data, it's private data, but you can say, okay, so if I looked at the student groups that have a parent that doesn't have a high school diploma, What can I do differently with that student group? What can I give them access to? What can I do? Maybe I can do professional learning or a class with parents where that I can teach them what they can do at home. Based in, yes, I would include their culture and just do at home. Based in, yes, I would include their culture and just talk to and have conversations about, is there somebody that can read to them at home? There may be an assumption that after they learn how to read at school that they shouldn't be read to anymore. That's a myth, but that may be something, and that could be typical. And you can look at all of this. So, because if you were to change this to high school, you'll notice, again, you probably already know what the trend is, but if you start to go to an associate's degree, you can start to see things that are different. So these students may have had access to different activities before they started in kindergarten. So this is a great place to start at the beginning of the year when you're looking at data, because this data is telling me a story. Now we will talk about what you can do with the data and how you can set that up with interventions and how it's going to inform your instruction. We'll talk a little bit about visible learning and clarity for learning and looking at data to drive instruction and intervention. And then how you can have students access different teachers, because students who have access to more than one teacher tend to do better. And I don't mean just middle and high school. I mean access, meaning you're still talking about the students in a group scenario. So that's something I want to really look at. And then the other thing that, I want to really live here, but here's what I would recommend. I'm just going to go, let's just live in the all students for a second. And I want to show you something. This is not just the data. I'm going to click on view ELA data test results. In one place, it gives you all the grades. Doesn't give me all the demographics unless I select that demographic group. What does that mean? So if I go back, actually, let me just go forward because I saw it at the top. I can go here and I can select a demographic group. Let's do that parent education and hit apply. Look, gives them all to me at once and I can open them up and it gives me all this information. So a non-high school graduate, students who have a parent that didn't graduate from high school, this is the information. Again, this is state data, but it's telling me something. And I can look at it by grade level. Good conversation if you're at a district level. The other thing that even if I wasn't in this student group and I still was in all students, this is what is very interesting. I wanted to point out these 4 areas: reading, writing, listening, and research and inquiry. These are questions that if I provided a professional development for principals, I would ask, or teachers, let me just step back, or teachers, I would say, how well do students understand stories and information that they read based on this data? Now, it looks at these 3 areas as above standard, near standard, and below standard. So if we highlight over it, the percentage of students at each claim level is calculated by dividing the number of students at the claim level by the total number of students with scores in the selected year for that area. So these are students that are above the standard, okay? That's a level 4, above the standard. These are students who nearly met the standard. The percentage of students at each claim level is calculated. It tells you all this information. And if you wanted to look at this here, let's go to the achievement level descriptors. This will help you. It is a rubric. Lot to look at, but you can pause it or go to it yourself. The web address, the URL, Universal Reading Language website address, is in the description. But look, so for reading, this is the above by dividing the number of students at the claim level by the total number of students with scores in the selected year for that area. So these are students that are above the standard, okay? That's a level 4, above the standard. These are students who nearly met the standard. The percentage of students at each claim level is calculated. It tells you all this information. And if you wanted to look at this here, let's go to the achievement level descriptors. This will help you. It is a rubric. Lot to look at, but you can pause it or go to it yourself. The web address, the URL, Universal Reading Language website address, is in the description. But look, so for reading, this is what it's saying students can do. Same with writing, listening, and research and inquiry. And it opens up mathematics, so we might as well look here. Just know that these are 4 claims, but the state of California puts these 2 claims together. Above standards means students can do this with concepts and procedures, this with problem solving, modeling, and data analysis, and this with communicating reasoning. right here. Okay. I don't like to focus on this too much. Why? Because I want all students to be here, but it's still a good conversation to have. So now I'm just going to go back because again, I want you to see this. You can understanding the results. You can go back there if you want. And I would click these and play with them. But this is really, really, really good information. And I can select the math report up here. I don't need to leave out of it. I used to leave out of it, but didn't notice that I could do it at the top. Same with this, asking teachers or principals, how well do students use mathematical rules and ideas? Like you have a lot of students here in like near standard, but what is happening? You get really good data in the state of California on the California Educator Reporting System. It's private. It is for you as a principal and teachers, but you can disaggregate that like you wouldn't believe, and you can have conversations about what we call the targets. And those targets are really like, how are they doing what they need to do? Like, do this, identify this, interpret this. And this is a place that I would live as a teacher and a principal at the beginning of the year, just to have a wide variety of conversation. And the other place that I would live here, and because this is a very long video, I am going to create another video and talk about the California dashboard, data quest and accessing demographic data, and ed data. So we will come back to all of this. Principals, teachers, you can create a professional development around looking at the claims and the state standards, because those claims are those domains in the state standards in California. So if you look at that and ask those questions, and when you're doing your walkthroughs and you're talking to students to see if they understand what they're really learning based on visible learning and clarity for learning, or John Hattie and the Dr. Almarad, who was forwarded by Dr. John Hattie, and I believe her name is Ms. Vargas. They really looking at three major questions. It's in the book. What are students learning? Like asking them, so what are you learning? Like looking down at the student, like, tell me. And then, why are you learning this concept? And then, how do you know when you've learned it? You can ask teachers the same thing. What are you teaching? Why are you teaching this concept, this skill, this content? And how do you know when your students will learn this? Like, you can add questions to that if you want, but those three are really important. And I would take this data and use that data, because even if you have really high test scores, that doesn't mean you can't access this same information and help students really understand their learning, because our job is to make students really take advantage of their own learning and become those learners that will hone in on their journey in their learning pathway. So again, go to the next video and let's talk about the California dashboard. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you comment and like and subscribe.